3, 2, 1, end of test. King with a go.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another edition of Warbird Wednesday. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum, and we are starting down attack helicopter lane with another country. We are with China today. China, my voice is changing. And we are talking about the Z-10. Now, the Z-10 will look a lot like some other helicopters, and I'm going to tell you why, because this thing has a checkered history. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and what am I, like a muffin or a cherry on top or something? All right, we'll toss this off. There we go to the Kevin, we got it. Now, the Z-10, or as the Chinese have eloquently named it, Helicopter 10, although I did some research, it also has another name, the Fierce Thunderbolt in Chinese, which is kind of an interesting name. Comes out of, its first flight was in 2003. It was introduced in 2012, but it had an interesting design history. We have been talking about land warfare primarily in Europe, primarily between East Bloc and Western Bloc forces. The idea that drove most of these attack helicopter designs were offensive operations either against NATO forces or the NATO troops, like I said, killing as much Russian armor, both tanks and BMPs, armored personnel carriers, to slow the Russians down until the United States could get troops. We have, throughout the world, pre-positioned supplies of tanks and material, but we have to get the people there. And that's kind of the thought process that went into that. Now, the Chinese had a completely different issue. There's a huge frontier with the Russians, but they're not necessarily against the Russians, so to speak. They're all happy little communist Marxist states, and they all dance around and are drinking vodka or whatever they do. But the reality was that they had a huge wake-up call in 1979, and the 1979 wake-up call, or in the 70s, and it prompted them for a review in 1979, was, Kevin, the war with the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese army had developed really good tank formations, and the Chinese primarily depended on the PLA, People's Liberation Army, developed or lived primarily with the Z-9 and the Z-11, which were armed utility helicopters. So what we've talked about before, in our case, it'd be a Huey, an upgunned Huey, but they didn't have in their inventory a lot of attack helicopters. And suddenly they ran into adversarial information, and guess what? Everybody in that neighborhood is equipped primarily with East Bloc, T-55, T-60, T-62s, and on up, T-72, T-80s, T-80s. And so they're all equipped with Eastern Bloc weapons, and they had a really, really difficult time handling Vietnamese armor. And they went, okay, well, we need to think about that. So in 1979, they decided, they did a review, that they were going to have to come up with something to cope with this this armored threat that they had perceived. Now, I'm going to throw up a plan view. Greg can throw up a plan view of the Z-10, and that's where the Z-10 came out of. In the 80s, then what they did was they were still kind of trying to figure out whether they were going to buy a third-party helicopter, and I'm going to blow your mind here in a minute, because one of the helicopters they were looking at, or they were going to home build, they were going to build something within China. 1988, this is why the Cobra in my hand is valuable, they actually secured an agreement to buy AH-1s. So think about that for a second, that they weren't as much of an adversary as they are now. They were not a near-peer adversary at that time. They had gobs of people. That was their tons of people under arms. But they were going to buy these AH-1s, and then something happened. And that was Tiananmen Square in 1989. The United States said, absolutely not. No technology transfers. We're not doing anything. And they had that thing called the Color Revolution. And the Chinese were, once again, the PLA, People's Liberation Army, was up against it again because they went, okay, we can't buy these abroad. Now, they created an army that was the acronym is PLAGFAF, all right? And that is the People's Liberation Army Ground Force Air Force. Let's do that acronym. So they created this and they started trying to figure out what to do. Now, they turned to the Russians. And in 1994, they did, and the helicopter, Greg can throw a picture up of the Z-10, if it looks familiar, and it kind of looks like a Russian attack helicopter, that is because in 1994, they did a secret contract with Kamov to design primarily the tub and the airframe and the system. Now, what they did is something that totalitarian regimes have done in the past. They went in the project masquerading as, took a page out of the Germans pre-war, they masqueraded it as a civilian contract. So they went in to this secret agreement with Kamov to design, and they promoted it as we're building a civilian helicopter, but it really was a weapon. Now, the other thing that happened in there was we basically said no technology transfers. Guess what happened? And that's why if you look a lot at Chinese and some Soviet or Russian federations, they look a lot like our aircraft. They really are aircraft, erased out. And you can argue with me in the comment section, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of technology transfer that goes on. And in this case, the Pratt & Whitney and Hamilton Sundstrand actually faced criminal charges because they gave the Chinese technology transfers. So this thing continued to move forward, and with that, I am going to pause. And what I'm going to pause with now is, and this is an unlikely shout out, but this is a modern shout out, and that is to the Australians. And the reason I shout out to the Australians and the Australian military, beauty mate, that's about as good as it gets, is Australia, Philippines, a lot of those folks in that sphere are the first line of defense if something happens. If the Chinese go after Taiwan or they try to disrupt shipping, because we are dealing now with a near-peer adversary with this and with the Z-10 and a lot of other Chinese weaponry. Now, why the Australians? Quite simply is that they've been here before, and that was in pre-war, World War II, when the Japanese were expanding across the Pacific. They were one of the bulwarks of democracies in the region. So they're right back at this again. Now today, we're going to be talking about Vernors, Vernors, Vernors original ginger ale soda, 140 calories a bottle. I don't see a sell-by date on this, but it does have authentic, bold taste. So we are going to put it to the ultimate test for our friends and our dear allies, the Australians. We're going to pop this cap. Oh, there was a little burp, and there's carbonation. This one actually might pass the test. We'll see. Give it. So to the Australians and all of you over down in there, good on you. We love you. We love what you're doing. Keep at it. Oh, there is a sell-by date there. When it went down, I could see it. That's actually not bad. You slept. It's like after 4 miserable drinks, this one's not bad. One more for the Aussies. Throw another shrimp on the Barbie and buy another nuclear sub. So, thank you very much, Australia. So, now here's where we tie back into the 2 designs that we talked about. The Chinese, again, because remember, when you're building one of these, and I'm talking about a contemporary, not a rebuilt utility helicopter. When you're building an attack helicopter, you have to have all of those displays, you have to have the technology, you have to have the engines, you've got to have everything. And guess what? If you can get it from a third party and you don't have to spend the money to develop it, that's a win. So what did they do? They, in 2000, made another attempt at getting Russian technology, and that failed. Now that was the 2 designs that we just, and this is why we're kind of doing these in order. These are the 2 designs that we just did, the Ka-50 and the Mi-28. They tried to get a hold of those, and that would have made sense. But what's happening in that region is people are getting more and more competitive. These Cold War partners are not as tight as they were. And so I think Russia got a little bit of sensitive about technology transfer and selling these things. And so that blew up again, and that is where we got to the first flight of the Z-10. Now, the Z-10 is your standard, there's nothing magic about this one. It is your standard attack helicopter design. It has unguided rockets. It's got a guided, tow equivalent. So for armor, it has a chain gun. It's 2 seats, gunner pilot configuration. It's got a tail rotor. As I said, it looks a ton like the Russian designs of the era, and you can kind of see that influence in the tech transfer. And Kamov, again in there, did a lot of the early design work before the thing blew up. What I mean by that, before the partnership just went south. Now the helicopter is the Z-10 is entirely produced in China. Now the one thing that I can't figure out, and I've looked around, and if you know in the comment section, the Mi-28 and the Ka-50 and the Ka-52 are very small build numbers. I mean, 150, 160 helicopters in the run. I think the Mi-28 is actually less than that. And in a hot war, when you're up against a near-peer adversary that has air defenses, those kind of numbers of helicopters will last weeks because they'll just get decimated. and they don't mean anything in a shooting war. You know, and there's an always rule in a shooting war: you got to go with what you have. The generals will tell you all the time, you're going to go with what you have. And in a modern war, you consume so much material because the weapons are so lethal that the chances of a World War II type situation where we can sit over here and open up factories and turn out a helicopter a day, that's not going to happen. It's going to be a much more quick, decisive war. Now, why is that serious? It is serious because I cannot tell you, and they do not publish. This was introduced in 2012, and it went to the People's Liberations Army, Ground Forces, Ground, happy people. I can't tell you a number that have been built. The only thing that I can tell you is that the Chinese said in 2016 that all of its Army aviation units have been equipped with the Z-10. So I don't know how many helicopters that is, but if that should make the hair stand up on your arm, that comment, there are a lot of Chinese Army aviation units. So I would venture a guess that the build on the Z-10 is much bigger than the Russian attack helicopters that we previewed previously. I will tell you, though, my other comment stands. Modern warfare is very lethal, and not a lot of this stuff is going to survive for a very long time in a theater. The Chinese have said that they added an air-to-air component with this helicopter in 2013, and then we know they have exported it to Pakistan. They sold some to Pakistan because of working. We were originally looking at the Cobras for them, but the relationship with Pakistan has not been getting really good. It's been deteriorating. And so we know the Chinese have sold some to Pakistan. So where does this fierce thunderbolt go with the Z-10? I think it's an indigenous aircraft. I think if history is any judge with the Chinese, they will build a bunch of them as they're going down. You know, the 350 ship Navy and a lot of their stuff, they will build gobs of them. They do not, as a vertical communist state, they don't have the same budget conversations that Western states do about defense allocation. But how many of the Z-10s are running around is anybody's guess. So we may eventually find out. Now, if you want to be the first kid on your block to have this is a very cool hat. Jason actually weaves these. He takes them home and makes them. No, he really doesn't. But it's a nice hat. It's got a very nice back. Summer is coming. You need one of these hats, so click on that link. Jason will happily run down to I know he'll run, but I'm not sure happily, to the store and get that out for if you click on the link. If you came across us on YouTube, be part of our family. If you like low production with me kind of doing the zippity doo-dah on these aircraft, give us a subscription, forward us to your friends. We have well over 200, we have over 700 videos on the YouTube channel. So click on that. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. If you came across us on Facebook, same thing. Both areas, give us a comment. I'm not always right. I'm always happy to kind of talk about your point of view, or if you have an idea. If you have an idea on something you want us to review, we get those, and we do. We actually will act on those. Remember, we cannot do all of this. I'm in the front of the helicopter wall in the Miles Korea-Vietnam hangar. We can't do this without your shekels. Click on that link. Donate a couple of bucks. We can sure use it. Remember, the Ed Guide links for the kiddos if you want to use the educational services that we offer. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
3, 2, 1, end of test. King with a go.